guys, it's Maddie or Books with Maddie, and today I am filming my June wrap-up. So this month I read 9 total books. I think that is probably the most books that I've read in a month this year, which is pretty exciting. I had 0 1-star books this month, which is very good, although we had a close call because we did have 1 2-star book and surprisingly only 1 3-star book. The majority of books I read this month were all 4 stars. So we have 5 4-star books and 2 5-star books. I hope I said that correctly. So we'll start from the lowest and go up to the 5 stars. I hope all of those numbers were correct. So starting off, we'll start off at the very bottom with our 2-star book, which surprisingly / unsurprisingly was Beautiful Creatures by Cami Garcia and Margaret Stoll. Surprisingly because I truly thought this was going to be a 1-star book. Unsurprisingly because we knew it wasn't going to get past 2 stars. This was a book club book that I read with Morgan, or Morgan's Chaotic World. She has a Bookstagram and Booktube. I've mentioned her several times. We have a book club where we go back and forth and choose books to read together. This was her pick for this month, and this is just like not super like a genre that I typically enjoy from, so I was going into it with pretty low expectations. The one thing that I was surprised about that I did enjoy was like the historical aspects of it, which is why I bumped it up to 2 stars, because I was like, you know, there were times when I was like genuinely interested in the plot that was happening. However, there were some just like weird moments. There was like slut shaming, there was definitely some sexist notions, and I didn't like any of the characters particularly besides the dog. There was a dog. I like the dog. What's interesting about this book is that it actually takes on a male point of view. So it follows a boy named Ethan who grows up in a southern town called Gatelin, and there's a new girl in town named Lena, and of course she's dark and mysterious, and they fall in love. They have a special connection right from the start and they fall in love. But is their love cursed? The blurb on the front says, "Some loves are meant to be, others are cursed." Ooh, ooh. If you're into cringy paranormal romance with maybe sexism and a weird amount of justification of the Civil War, maybe read this book, I guess. Moving on to our 1 3-star book of the month, it was Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. I've been trying to integrate more Black authors into my TBRs for each month, and this was one of the books that I read by a Black author. This is a collection of her essays about things all the way from feminism to racism, and talks about politics, pop culture, tons and tons of different topics along the way. I really did enjoy a lot of it. A good chunk of it I found very, very impactful, very moving. Some of the best essays I've read were in here. However, a large majority of it felt kind of like it was just reviewing other people's content. There were a lot of pop culture references in here that I didn't necessarily get because they were from books I haven't read, TV shows I haven't watched, or movies that I haven't seen, things like that. And like, in order to understand certain parts of the essays that would like the main talking point, you had to have seen whatever she was reviewing. And it was just kind of like, I can't connect to this essay in the same way I would be able to if I had read this book or seen this movie or watched this TV show. And so it was hard to connect with some of the stuff in here because I hadn't witnessed the things that she was talking about, as well as it didn't feel like original, a lot of the stuff, because it was just reviewing other people's content. And so I wish that there had been more of her own original ideas, or like just some of these essays I feel like could have been expanded. I don't really have a very solid criticism of this. I feel like I think a lot of it was just like personal, like I couldn't connect with a lot of it because I hadn't witnessed the pop culture that she was talking about, and some of it it just wasn't necessarily for me. I would still recommend you read this. A lot of the essays were extraordinarily impactful, and I think that this book is incredible despite the fact that I couldn't connect to some of the essays. I wish that maybe some of those essays had been removed, other ones had been expanded, things like that. I think that with a little bit more work this could be a really good collection, but it just wasn't for me. And I saw a lot of other reviews mention similar criticisms, that they just couldn't connect to it because of the immense amount of just reviewing of other people's material there was inside of this. Okay, moving on to 4-star books. This is our biggest section of books. So starting off, I read Normal People by Sally Rooney this month. Me and Morgan read this book together for our book club. This was my choice, and I had very high hopes for this book. I was very, very excited to read it. I've heard incredible things about it, and it truly moved me. Like, I was, like, feeling the actual, like, real emotions from just reading a book. Like, you know what I mean by the difference between, like, book emotions and, like, real emotions? Like, I was, like, physically feeling things while reading this book. I was like, man, this is an intense book. The language in this book, the way that Sally Rooney writes is just, like, incredible. The way she creates such vivid, like, realistic characters is just incredible, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. However, the reason that it wasn't 5 stars was the end. I personally didn't like the end, no spoilers or anything, but I just found the end underwhelming and it didn't really resolve, and I think that she probably did that on purpose. Something else needed to happen at the end. Like, I felt like with such a heavy and excellently written book with such vivid characters, like, there needed to be some kind of redemption for that at the end, and I thought that it wasn't really done justice. I just realized that I messed up, and I actually have 4 4-star books and 3 5-star books. If I'm correct, I overestimated the number of 5-star. No, I overestimated the number of 4 stars and underestimated the number of 5 stars. 1 more 5-star, 1 less 4-star, whatever the numbers were before. Okay, the second 4-star book that I'm going to be talking about is Hidden Figures by Margaret Lee Shetterly. This is also written by an author of color. I've had this book on my shelf for a really long time, and I finally got around to it this month. It was incredible. I loved it. I listened to like half of it on audiobook and read half of it just so that I could do other things while I was listening to it, and I loved the audiobook. I have not seen the movie, but I've heard that the movie is phenomenal as well. This book basically follows the stories of 4 African American women who are, the back says it follows the interwoven accounts of Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, Katherine Johnson, and Christine Darden, but there are only 3 women on the cover. I don't know whom is whom, so I don't know which of those 4 women I left off of the cover, but it follows their 4 stories as they participate in the work of NASA and how they heavily contributed to the space race and things like that, of that sort, as well as their stories before that, how they got into NASA, their schooling, their families, everything like that. It was an incredible book. My only criticism of it was the writing. I didn't super connect with the writing. A lot of it was like went over my head. There was a lot of like detail into the actual mechanics behind the things that they were calculating. They were all incredible mathematicians, and I am not. I am very bad with math and science, and there were a lot of things that just went straight over my head. There were long catalogs of like paragraphs of information about stuff that I just like could not connect with at all. A lot of it felt very clinical. It would be like a really impactful part of the story, and like there would be beautiful writing and everything, and then I feel like certain parts of it just like were not up to par with the rest. They were just very clinically written and like just a list of facts almost. So my criticism with this book was that the reason it wasn't 5 stars was because of the writing. Other than that, I highly recommend this book, and those parts that I am criticizing were not even the majority of the book. So this book would probably be closer to 4.5 stars if I could do half stars on Goodreads, but this book was truly incredible, and I highly, highly recommend it. The next 4-star book that I read this month was To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I've had this on my shelf for quite a while. I read it in 8th grade, but I didn't really know what was going on when I first read it. So I read it again this month, and I really, really enjoyed it. The reason I only gave it 4 stars was because I think that a lot of weight is put on this book to carry the education of racism for people in schooling. So for me, a lot of my education of racism in my public school experience was based on this book, especially in English classes. Obviously, we learned about things like slavery and the Civil War in our history classes, but we really didn't get an extensive look at racism during school, and I think that this is a phenomenal example of the racism that exists in our country and has existed in our country, but it is from the perspective of a white savior complex. So basically it is told through the white perspective, which I don't think can fully capture the Black experience because it's told through a white perspective. So this book, if you don't know, follows 2 children named Jem and Scout. They grow up in a southern town, which shows the divide that racism causes. Their father, Atticus, is a lawyer and ends up defending a Black man who is accused of raping a white girl, and it shows the ways that he is ridiculed in their town and judged for defending this black man. Then it goes through the trial and shows the ways in which racism continues to persist in our justice system. I thought it was very, very impactful. I thought it made some weird assumptions about women and never really resolved them. I think that this book can still hold up despite those assumptions, but I don't think that they should be ignored. I thought it was great, but I don't think that it is, like, this isn't it. Like, this should not be the only basis of our education on racism. This is a great start, but it is not the end. So that is more of the reason that I'm giving it 4 stars than 5, because for what it is worth, I don't want this to be the 5-star book that I use to educate myself on racism. Like, this is a phenomenal book, but it isn't it. Okay, the last 4-star book I read this month was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is a romance between the first son of America and the Prince of England. It follows their journey from enemies to lovers and kind of a fake friendship scenario. So after a mishap between the two of them at the Prince of England's brother's wedding, they have to pretend to be best friends to cover up what may have happened, and it ends up going to a little bit farther than friendship. Oh, tea. I give it 4 stars just because I didn't really enjoy the ending. It felt really rushed, and it felt like it was just trying to tie up all of the loose ends really, really quickly, and the ending just felt so out of place, and it didn't really feel like it was the same as the rest of the book. And so I really enjoyed the majority of it, but the ending just like felt really weird to me, and I did not like the ending at all. So 4 stars for Red, White, and Royal Blue. But I still loved it. It was still wonderful. Okay, now we're moving on to 5-star books. And the first 2 are kind of like, okay, like, they are both Harry Potter books, so The Chamber of Secrets and The Prisoner of Azkaban. Despite how trash J.K. Rowling is as a person, I'm still continuing to read this series because I already own it, and I've already read it, and I've already loved it, and I'm just pretending Daniel Radcliffe wrote them instead. So Daniel Radcliffe did a great job writing these books, and I've loved rereading them so far. I have not actually finished The Prisoner of Azkaban, so I just have like a little bit left, but I know it's gonna be 5 stars because I've already read it, and I already know, and I'm loving it so far. So that is the last book that I have to finish before this month ends. I'm filming this earlier in June, so I still have a couple more days to finish the book, which I'm planning on finishing today. 5 stars those. The last 5-star book of this month was probably one of my new favorite books of the year, maybe, and it is Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab. This duology is the first thing that I have ever read of Victoria Schwab or V.E. Schwab. I do own A Darker Shade of Magic, but I decided to read the This Savage Song duology first. Is that what the duology is called? No, it's called Monsters of Verity, or is it just Verity? I don't know. This duology first, and as you might know, This Savage Song took me like 3 months to get through. I could not for the life of me connect to that book for the first half of it, and then the second half of it was incredible, and I loved it, and I ended up only giving it 3 stars because the first half of it I just like could not get through, but I ended up picking up Our Dark Duet, and I loved it with my whole entire soul. I loved it. I loved it so much. I loved it so much. Like, I don't really hear people talking about this duology, maybe because it's like a little bit older, or like everybody else talking about V.E. Schwab's other like more popular stuff, but like, oh my gosh, like, you should really read this. The ending actually destroyed me. I don't know if I'll ever recover, and like, knowing me in my past, I would have given it like 3 stars because of the ending, but I still gave it 5 stars because it was just so incredible. It was just so good, and I just loved it so much, and I hope you read it because you really should, and your life will be changed. Like, this is such a good book. Anyway, those are all of the 9 books that I read this month. Usually summer months are my biggest reading months. I have quite a big TBR for July because of my deck of cards choosing my TBR, which was my last video. If you want to check that out, it'll be linked in the description. But also the reading rushes in July, so I have that TBR coming up as well. I will post that as soon as my books come in. I'm very excited for that. Let me know below what the best book that you read in June was. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great day and a great week, and I will see you soon.